So today's Cardinal lesson, we're talking about the important ages in retirement or milestones. As you approach retirement, you get in retirement, there's things that you can do at these ages, and you need to be aware of your options. If you really think about it, I mean, when you get your learner's permit at 15, and get your driver's license at 16, and then you're legal to uh, get a drink of alcohol if that's you're so inclined. When you're a kid, nobody has to tell you about all these ages. You know about them and you're on it. And then from 21 to 50, there's nothing. And we have people come into us all the time. A lot of our typical customers are coming into us around 65, maybe a little before, around Medicare and around retirement. And we have to teach them about all this stuff that's gone on beforehand. So we're going to walk through what each of these ages means. But before we do that, I want to bring Tom on. I want to talk about why we're doing this video today.
I mean, we're doing this video because these ages are important. And if you miss them or don't know about them, you can make expensive mistakes. And so what I want to do now is sort of bring up the show notes. You can find these at the link below our video. They're also on our website. It has the picture of the board, like all our show notes do, and then really a little more detail about the different ages that we're going to go over on the board here. So I don't want to spend a lot of time in today, but if you want something a little bit bigger, go in, print these out. You can look at them and really study them a little bit more. So I'll turn it back to Hans. We'll sort of go through sort of step by step on this board and just talk about each of these ages and what happens and what's important and what you need to know about.
Yeah. So the first age is 50, where something significant happens. And, for most people, we're near retirement. And, we have people coming into us at 65. And one of the things that's on their mind is they want to figure out how to turn their IRA or their 401k into a Roth so that they can have tax-free money in retirement. And we show them how to do that. But if you pay attention to this age thing, or those of you that are in your 50s, or maybe even before, at age 50, you can start putting more money in your 401k. And to be exact, in 2024, people under 50 can put $23,000 they can tax shelter in their 401k. And they can, for a catch-up contribution that starts at 50, they can put an additional $7,500 in there. So this would be a good time to look at your contribution and maybe get part of it or all of it switched over to Roth. So what I was talking about at 65, if you'd started in your 50s taking your contribution and then first of all increasing it because you can in your 50s, and then making some or all of it a Roth contribution, you're going to have a pretty significant Roth balance by the time you get to be 65. So just think about that. And with the IRA, you can put an extra $1,000 in there. So it's a $7,000 contribution to the regular IRA or a Roth IRA. And when you're 50 and older, that's an additional $1,000 or $8,000. So that's the first milestone. 55, a lot of you think, well, what happens at 55? Well, if you're in a 401k, your money's still in the 401k, and you retire, you can take money out of your 401k and distributions to live off of, and you're not going to have to pay the 10% penalty. So that's a special provision for money coming out of a 401k, but you need to meet all those guidelines. Now, the next age that's significant is age 59 and a half, and most people know what that is. And that any IRA or 401k or anything, whether you're retired or not, you can pull money out of there and no 10% penalty. And that 10% penalty is pretty significant, and you're going to want to avoid that. And so just know that you've got some options when you turn 59 and a half. Now I want to bring Tom on. He wants to talk about a case study that he's dealt with somebody 55 that was in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't know about this 55-year-old sort of the 10% penalty exception. And so just to reiterate how this works is you have to be working for a company. And if you retire between the ages of 55 and 59 and a half, so you're in this window of time and you leave the money in the 401k or 403b, it works with that as well. You can access that money, take it out, live off of it. You still pay income tax, which is normal with traditional IRAs and 401ks, but you avoid the 10% penalty. So a lot of times we might have someone who's just retired, maybe they retired early. And in this case study, this gentleman, he retired early, wanting us to help with the investments, help manage the money. And we got looking at over his whole plan, and he was going to need this money to live off of for the next 5, 6, 7 years before he starts Social Security. And so I said, well, wait a minute, before we do anything, we need to look at this, because if we pull it out, you move it over to us to manage, which would have been nice for us to do that. We make money in that, but at the same time, it would not have been right for him, because then when he needs money, we send it to him, he'd pay the 10% penalty. And so we recommended he leave the money in the 401k. We kind of help manage it from afar, help a little bit. Well, here's what you should invest in your options, help with the distributions, but it is a way for him to access his money without that 10% penalty. Once he gets to 59 and a half, he can now roll it to an IRA. He can live off of it. It's no problem at that point. In his situation, one of those sort of interesting pieces is, that makes it a little more complicated, is his plan only allows for one distribution a year. So we kind of have to fund the whole year's income needs one time, which is a little bit tricky. So hopefully most plans aren't that restrictive, but his unfortunately is. So again, it's very detail oriented, a lot of things and ways that you can make mistakes. So before you start trying to go do all this on your own, you might want to talk to a professional like us, where we can sort of walk you through the best way to do that. And again, it needs to be part of an overall plan, making sure that you're put in the best situation. So again, 55 is an important age, especially if you're retiring and needing that money to live off of. You need to really leave that money in, or at least a part of it in the 401k, to be able to do that.
Where 59 and a half really matters as well is for people that want to do Roth conversions, but they don't have other money to pay the taxes. And they still want to do Roth conversions. If they're over 59 and a half, they can actually pay the taxes of the conversion out of the IRA without incurring the 10% penalty. So moving on to age 62, this is the first age for most people, not all people, but most people, that you can start Social Security. And you want to be real careful doing that, because if you start it then, first of all, you're going to take a hit in the amount, okay? And it's up to 30% of what would be your full retirement age Social Security check. And then secondly, if you're still working and you take it any time before full retirement, you are going to have to give some of it back if you make too much money from a job. So we're going to put 62 out there for some people, like the guy Tom just talked about. Great. Some people have planned all along to retire at 62. They've got supplemental money. It's all fine for some people. We just, when you're doing planning, every person that comes into us for financial planning, we're going to vet and we're going to tell them when is the best time for them to take Social Security and give our recommendation. Now, this is a big one for most people, is age 65. And a lot of people that don't really study this stuff, they think everything happens at 65. Retirement, Social Security, Medicare, and the only thing anymore, that 65 used to be the Social Security full retirement age, but that was a long time ago. And now it's the eligibility for Medicare. Now, does this mean you have to sign up for Medicare at 65? No, it doesn't. It does for some people, but for a lot of people, if you're still working and covered under group insurance, or your spouse is still working and covered under group insurance, and you choose to stay on the group insurance, you can delay signing up for Medicare until you ultimately leave your job, and you can still avoid those penalties. So we have other videos about that. And if you want to watch them, we get into that. And if you have a question about that, call us. But this is the beginning of Medicare. And for a lot of self-employed professionals that may still have a high income, they're real happy to go on Medicare because they've been paying a high premium for individual health insurance under 65. And this starts looking pretty good. So that's the date. It's the first of the month of your 65th birthday. Now, the next important age that we have is age 66. And it's 66 or 66 and 2 months, 66. Like my retirement age, full retirement is 66 and 8 months. And that's the date, full retirement age, where you can take your Social Security check, you get your full Social Security check, and you can still be working. Now, personally, I don't plan to do that. I plan to delay all the way up to 70, but if things change, I might. In any case, that's a right that you have if you were born between 1943 and 1959, somewhere in the 66 zone. If you were born 1960 and after, 67 is your full retirement age. So you want to remember those dates when you're studying doing Social Security. And then 70 is the age where you do have to take your Social Security because it's not going to get any larger. So when your 70th birth month or you turn 70, you better go ahead and take your Social Security, because if you don't, it's not going to go up anymore and you're going to miss some more checks. So that's the age where the maximum check is going to come to you. Now, we don't suggest that everyone wait till 70. I'm just telling you a lot of people have that as a target. And in our financial planning, if you can afford to wait for 70, and it makes sense, in a lot of cases, we recommend the higher earner do that. Okay? Now, then you have age 70 and a half, and this corresponded with the 59 and a half. Well, why they have to use half years, it just adds to confusion, but I think there was a compromise somewhere in there. And that was the age that minimum distributions used to begin. For people 1949 and earlier, birth years, the minimum distributions began at 70 and a half. But for people younger than that, it's a later age that we'll get to. Okay? The next 70 and a half, it's still the same age, 70 and a half. You are now eligible to do qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs. I want to bring Tom on to talk a little bit about QCDs.
And so a qualified charitable distribution is, again, like Han said, you have to be 70 and a half to do this, but it's when you can take money directly out of an IRA. Now, this is an important step. It cannot be a 401k. It needs to be an IRA. But you take money directly out of an IRA and give it to a charity. And I guess I should reframe that. The money comes out of the IRA directly to the charity. You aren't actually touching the money. And so most custodians, or pretty much all of them, are going to have a form that you fill out to send it to a church or send it to some qualified charity. The benefit of this is it's not taxable to you. So I'm taking, say, $5,000 out of my IRA. I don't pay taxes on it. It goes to the charity. They don't pay taxes on it. That money was never taxed. It's a great way to do your giving at 70 and a half. It is not a reason to start giving, because yes, that money is now gone. It's out of your portfolio. But if you are charitably inclined, or you are already giving to different charities at 70 and a half, everybody should do their giving this way via the QCD. And so again, if you have questions, talk with a CPA and accountant. There's some nuances and things you need to follow. As an example, when you get your 1099 from the custodian, whoever sends that to you, on the 1099, they don't classify it as a QCD. They just show it as a distribution. So you have to know to tell your accountant that's how it was done. So again, some small things like that. But certainly, if you are already giving, this is how you should do your giving, starting at 70 and a half.
Yeah, I mean, we have people use this quite a bit. You can give to more than one charity. You can fill out a few forms. This also counts as your minimum distribution, which you don't have at 70 and a half anymore. But this is the age where they start. You can do them every year for the rest of your life. And for people with large IRA balances, they're also charitably inclined, they want to give, and they're looking at large minimum distributions. This is a technique that we use, and we even start planning for them before 70 and a half for people, again, that we always have a set of questions that we ask people. We're not going to be harping on you to give money to charities through QCD unless you tell us that that is something you have a desire to do.
One other point on that is they do max out the limit. It is 100,000. That's now going to be set to index or inflation, so it will be a little bit more moving forward. But that's the sort of the maximum you could give. We haven't really had anyone max that out except maybe a couple people, so that's not you have a lot of room to do some giving there. And as it relates to financial planning, that might be a reason to not do any Roth conversions, right? If you were planning on giving a lot of your IRA away, we don't want you to intentionally pay the taxes, put it into a Roth, and then just give the money away. You're much better off leaving it in the traditional IRA, because when you have traditional IRA money, the money went in, you got a tax deduction at that time. It has grown tax deferred, so you haven't paid taxes on any of the growth, and then you can give it away tax free. That money was never taxed the life of that money. I mean, there aren't that many situations that you could say that money it was never taxed. And so if you're giving, doing it through the IRAs is very beneficial.
Okay. Now, age 73, this was the age that the Secure Act moved minimum distributions from 70 and a half to now 73. So that gave people like me 2.5 more years to not take minimum distributions or to delay taking them. I'm not sure that that's the wise strategy, is to try to minimize your distribution, because you're creating a tax problem for later. But we're just going over the rules here today. And so people born 1951 or after, 73, the year you turn 73 is the year that your first minimum distribution, or RMD, is due. Then age 75 is for people born 1960 or after. You're able to take your first RMD, or required minimum distribution, at age 75. So what we've done today is just gone through the milestones, the dates. It's kind of the 25 years of your life, or of my life, that just flashed before me. If we sit here and look, the top line is dealing all with IRA and 401k distributions. The next line is pretty much talking about Social Security and Medicare. And then the rest of the lines are back on RMDs, your money, required minimum distributions, your IRA, your 401k. And over on this side, all of the 7 worries, these are more outcomes, because you mess this stuff up, or you miss deadlines, your income is going to suffer, your estate is going to be more of a problem, and you're going to pay more taxes than you otherwise would have. So I want to bring Tom back on. I'm Hans Scheil.
And I'm Tom Griffith.
And we thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.